In my last vlog, it was all about motivation, that spark that gets us interested and kind of buoys us along on the next part of our vocal journey. And today I want to take that a little bit further, because if you're just starting out along your vocal journey, then all of this is very new to you. You know you have a voice because you speak, and we use that all day, every day. But there's always a kind of curiosity about whether or not that voice, that speaking voice, then translates into a singing voice. And of course, you only have your one voice that you will be using for speaking and then singing. And there is no difference of its use. It's just an extension one to the other. But here I'm talking about experience, what you truly want to experience in using your voice. And for sure, as you start on your journey, you're going to want to have all those tools that I've spoken about, all those essentials that you have to have in your toolbox, your singing toolbox. And that's, my 5 essential vocal exercises, which is really about just introducing the whole notion of what kind of things go into when what we think of as singing. So you're right at the beginning of your journey, and you come and have a few singing lessons, or you start to explore what your voice can actually do. And you go for an audition, or you ask to join a local choir. Now, you'll feel safe in that environment because your voice will be one of many. As I say, there is that kind of security in knowing that you are not going to be singled out. Your voice will blend. And in doing so, the person who's running the choir will hope that each of the members of that group will be thinking along those lines. And if it's a very big choir, then even more so, the kind of vocal bits and pieces that he's going to ask you to use, whether it's soft singing, loud singing, getting louder, getting softer, slower, faster, short and detached, or long and smooth, will be something that you'll be doing as a group. And you'll be learning within that group, that large chorus, to modify the way you're singing to please the instructions of the person who's running the course, the choir. So there's a slight kind of crossover of interests for me there. Now, I have directed choral groups, not large groups, but certainly a group of, say, upwards of 30 members. And yes, you are after the kind of aesthetic, artistic whole of the music that you're all learning and you're singing. For me, there is always that question of making sure that everybody is vocally happy with the way in which that they are producing those sounds. Okay, so sometimes what happens for people is that they start off by wanting to sing, they join a choir and a group, and then somewhere along the way that ceases to be enough. They want to see if they can actually be more authoritative with the use of their voice, that their actual contribution is of a greater value, i.e. taking on more responsibility within a smaller group, when the sound of your voice, as it naturally is one that blends well with other singers. And this is where we get into a slightly different area when it comes to actually learning about how your voice works, because your knowledge of vocal technique will need to grow, because when you're not amongst many voices, there's more possibility that your voice is going to be heard. This is exciting. The prospect of singing in a smaller group where their voice might be heard, or they might have more responsibility, with maybe a small solo, or perhaps an entry of music, is going to be up to them to actually deliver it. And so the whole thing starts to take on a different life. And the difference between the two kinds of singing is that one requires a lot of self-assurance and the other one is more kind of, not exactly a safer bet, but it's just as pleasing, but a different experience. And certainly when you're singing as part of a big choir, the auditory experience that you receive from the people singing around you is very, very different than when you're singing in a smaller ensemble group. And I think it's interesting that the courage that is required to actually put your hand up and say, yeah, that's for me. I want to sing in a smaller group and I am going to take responsibility for my own vocal sound and find out a little bit more about how I'm using it. It's the same as, I don't know, any skill that you're learning really, whether it's artistic skills, learning to throw pottery, learning to make, learning to do things like dressmaking or lace making. You know, we all have to start out somewhere, and as your knowledge base grows, as you embark on this singing journey, you soon get to know where you feel most comfortable. And it's absolutely fine to belong to a big choir and go and do that thing. It's also to be commended if you decide that actually no, you want to do more, and therefore you're going to take on more responsibility along the path of your vocal journey. But in doing so, you're going to sort of automatically start taking on more need to know about vocal technique, because again, remember, the auditory experience that you receive as a singer singing in a smaller group is different than the one that you receive when you're singing amongst many, many voices, where in truth you shouldn't really be able to hear your own voice in a very large choir because of the multitude of voices around you. Your voice is one of many, whereas in an ensemble group you are going for blend, but it's more of a kind of aesthetic, artistic, automatic response from you to the rest of the ensemble group. And that's what's so very interesting about the vocal journey, is that everyone has to start out at the beginning, and it's amazing the different paths people choose to take. Now, if I could just wrap this up with a little story, a personal story of my own. I was a very shy child and was the kind of person who felt very self-conscious if I put my hand up in class, but I knew that I really loved music and actually being in plays. So it wasn't long before that kind of, led me along a particular path, and I started having singing lessons. I don't think I ever really was particularly fond of singing in a choir. I think I soon became very aware of the frustrations I felt, the difference between having singing lessons where I was learning solo songs and then putting my voice into a choir. Worthwhile experience, of course, but I knew intrinsically in my heart that singing in a choir wasn't really exciting to me. I belonged to a small girls' choir where we had about, 20 voices, led by my then singing teacher. That was better, and certainly I had my share of solos in there, which made it more exciting, but it soon became very clear to me that actually, no, solo singing was really going to be the thing that I wanted to do. So I have never felt particularly driven to want to belong to a choir. And I know why that is. It's because I don't find it as fulfilling as I do actually having the opportunity to use my voice in a solo capacity. And I think, that's each to his own or her own to decide that. And I guess once you start your vocal journey and you work out the basic, the nuts and bolts of what it takes to use your voice, to then belong to a group is fine, but I think you soon have to work out where you think that's taking you, because it's very often the case that, from my perspective anyway, in big choirs there's not much opportunity to foster that kind of vocal care aspect of, what's happening within the development of your own voice. Normally within a big choir, what's happening is it's the end result, the overall picture that is the thing that the experience will generate for you. So it's your voice is part of your tiny voice is part of a big jigsaw. And then as soon as you get into smaller group singing, that changes, and you have to become slightly more knowledgeable about the way in which you use your voice. I hope that's clear. It's a tricky one, this, because of course I have my own leanings, and will always encourage people to follow what they really want to do. But also I'm quick to recognise if someone is talking to me about not being totally satisfied with what's happening with their voice because of this, this and this, I will be quick to say, you might find that actually coming out of a big choir and concentrating more on smaller ensemble singing will be more satisfying to you along your vocal journey. Everyone, each to their own. It's a choice you have to make. So I will leave that there for the time being until the next time. Okay, so happy singing.